3 stories. One is a lie. A surgeon who slaughters, a painting that kills, and a festival that murders. 2 of them are true. One is completely fake. Can you spot the imposter? This is the hidden third. Dr. Elias Morgan was the kind of surgeon legends whispered about, flawless in technique, emotionless in demeanor. At St. Barlow's Hospital, tucked in the industrial gray of Pittsburgh, he was revered, feared, and ultimately left alone. No one dared question the man who saved more lives than anyone could count. But beneath his surgical brilliance, something rotted in the shadows of his legacy. New residents at St. Barlow's were always given the same warning: don't ask about operating room 9. It wasn't marked on any floor plan. And yet, some swore they'd seen it, just once, usually late at night, in the oldest wing of the hospital. Behind rusted double doors. Always cold. Always locked. In 1996, a surgical intern named Rachel Sung was the first to openly challenge the myth. Driven by ambition and an insatiable curiosity, she began reviewing Dr. Morgan's old patient logs. Most were spotless, except one, Abigail Geller, age 9, admitted for a routine appendectomy. She never left the hospital. No discharge. No death certificate. Just, gone. Rachel's obsession grew. She pulled records, questioned nurses, even bribed an old janitor. Finally, she convinced him to take her to the old West Wing after hours. The halls were cold, much colder than the rest of the building. As if the HVAC hadn't touched it in decades. There it was. Room 9. Unmarked, yet unmistakably real. The janitor refused to go further. Rachel stepped inside. The room hadn't been used in years, yet a surgical table sat in the center, surrounded by yellowed curtains and stained lights. Tools lay scattered across a rusted tray. But what chilled her wasn't the tools. It was the surgical diagrams pinned on the walls, each one marked with a child's name. Including Abigail. A cabinet in the corner rattled. Rachel froze. She approached, hands trembling. Opened it. Inside was a stack of old VHS tapes. Each labeled by date. She took one. That night, back in her apartment, she borrowed an old player and pressed play. The footage showed Dr. Morgan in the OR. A small child lay unconscious. Abigail. But the surgery wasn't an appendectomy. It was something else. Surgical incisions didn't match anything Rachel had studied. The procedure was unnecessary. Clinical. Almost ritualistic. Dr. Morgan was whispering something. Not to the staff. Not to the child. But to himself. A mantra in a language Rachel didn't recognize. And then, he paused. Turned. Looked directly into the camera. As if he knew someone would one day watch. The footage cut. The next day, Rachel returned to the hospital. Room 9 was gone. Walled off. Erased. Her residency was abruptly terminated. 2 weeks later, Rachel was found in her apartment, wrist slit in a bathtub of blackened water. No note. Just a VHS tape floating beside her. It had melted. No one speaks of Dr. Morgan anymore. Officially, he retired in 1998. Unofficially, some say he still visits St. Barlow's. Especially late at night. Near the West Wing. Where the cold never leaves. They say art imitates life. But in the case of the Sable Woman, it seemed to control it. In 1896, in a misty village nestled in the Carpathian Mountains, a reclusive Hungarian painter named István Korbeli unveiled a haunting portrait at a private salon. The painting featured a woman dressed in a sable cloak, standing in the center of a burnt forest, her eyes piercing, almost accusatory. No one knew who she was. Corbelli claimed she came to him in a dream. But those who saw it swore she looked familiar, as if they'd met her once but couldn't place where. The painting was immediately sold to Countess Erzsébet Horváth, a patron of the arts and the last heiress of a dwindling noble line. Within weeks of acquiring the piece, her staff reported strange behavior. She would sit before the portrait for hours, whispering things to it. She stopped eating. She stopped sleeping. Then one morning, the Countess was found hanging in the same cloak from the painting, one that no one remembered her owning. Her last journal entry read only: "She watches me. She knows I lied." The painting disappeared after the Countess's death, only to resurface in Vienna, in a private gallery owned by art historian Wilhelm Drexler. Drexler dismissed the death as coincidence and proudly displayed the portrait in a temporary exhibit themed Visions of the Uncanny. On opening night, 3 guests fainted while viewing it. One began convulsing, screaming, "She's inside me. Make her leave." The exhibit was shut down by morning. That night, Drexler set fire to his entire gallery. The painting was the only item recovered, untouched by flame. Drexler vanished without a trace. Police believed he fled the country, ashamed. But 3 days later, his body was found drowned in the Danube, tied to a sable cloak, with his eyes gouged out. The painting vanished again. It reappeared in 1934 Berlin, hidden in the private collection of a high-ranking Nazi official, who was obsessed with the occult. According to declassified intelligence files, he believed the painting held a fragment of a pagan death goddess. Witnesses claimed he'd chant to it in dead languages, feeding it bits of raw meat. One night, all 8 members of his household were found dead, positioned as if frozen in terror, eyes open, mouths agape, facing the painting. From that day on, the painting was deemed cursed. The Allies tried to destroy it after the war. They burned it, shot it, drowned it. But nothing worked. It always resurfaced, clean, whole, watching. Eventually, it ended up in the possession of the Museum of the Occult in Prague. Sealed behind triple glass. Visitors weren't allowed to look directly into the eyes. A warning plaque read, "Look not too long. She remembers." That didn't stop 22-year-old Katerina, a photography student visiting in 1999. She dared her friend to snap a selfie with the painting. She smiled. The photo was later found in her phone, but her body was never recovered. Her jacket, lined with sable fur, was found folded neatly beneath the display. The museum closed the exhibit permanently. Today, the Sable Woman is said to be hidden deep underground in a climate-controlled vault in Geneva, owned by a private collector who refuses to even acknowledge its existence. But here's the strangest part. In 2021, a Reddit user named @BlackFirstBeast posted a high-resolution scan of the painting, claiming to have found it in a junk shop in Bucharest. The post went viral. Within 24 hours, his account was deleted. His IP address traced back to a hospital psychiatric ward. No name. No patient record. One comment still remains on the archived thread. "She knows who lied." Just like the Countess wrote over a century ago. Is it all coincidence? Mass hysteria? Or has the Sable Woman been quietly feeding on guilt, for generations? Look her in the eyes. And ask yourself, what did you lie about? It's said that in the mist-shrouded hills of northern Japan, where forgotten villages cling to the edge of ancient forests, there once was a celebration known only to the locals, Shizuka Matsuri, the Silent Festival. According to fragmented records and whispered accounts, this eerie event occurred once every 25 years in the village of Kayazawa, now wiped from most maps. No banners announced it. No music played. No invitations were sent. But when the moon hung low and blood orange in the winter sky, the villagers would gather in silence. Not a word was spoken from sundown to sunrise. Instead, villagers donned white masks carved from cypress wood, blank, smooth, and expressionless. They wore ceremonial robes stitched without seams, and they walked barefoot through the snow-covered village paths, lit only by candlelight. Each person carried a small bell in their hands, but none dared to ring them. It was a ritual, yes, but more than that, a warning. The legend said that Kayazawa had once suffered a horrific calamity, details lost to time, but something dark had been unleashed. To keep it dormant, the villagers offered their silence every quarter century, believing that if even one word were spoken, the curse would stir once more. In 1998, a Japanese-American documentarian named Rei Morita heard about the legend from her grandmother, who grew up near the region. Intrigued by the haunting concept of a festival without sound, Rei gathered a small team, her camera operator, Yuki, and a local guide named Daichi, and set off to find Kayazawa. Their trek into the mountains was rough. The village wasn't on GPS. No roads reached it. They hiked for hours through snow-draped forests until Daichi halted at a weathered stone marker half buried in the frost. On it were kanji barely legible, Kayazawa. They were close. Kayazawa lay just beyond the trees, eerily intact, yet lifeless. Houses still stood. Lanterns hung. But there were no people. It was as if everyone had left in the middle of preparing for something. On the porch of the central shrine, they found dozens of the white masks, pristine, undisturbed, placed in a perfect row. Beside them, robes, and hundreds of tiny bells, each tied with faded red string. Rei, skeptical but fascinated, insisted they stay until sunset to document everything. As the sun dipped behind the trees, an unnatural quiet blanketed the village. No birds. No wind. Even their footsteps felt muffled. Then, the candles along the village paths lit themselves, one by one, despite no sign of people. Yuki whispered, "Did you see that?" But Daichi's face had gone pale. He hissed, "Don't speak." Shh. Rei chuckled nervously. "Are you serious?" Daichi stared at her. "It's the silent festival. I thought it was a myth, but this is it. No sound. No words." He grabbed one of the masks and pressed it to his face. Yuki followed, trembling. Rei hesitated, but the oppressive silence pressed down on her chest like a weight. Reluctantly, she lifted a mask and joined them. For the next hour, they wandered the village, filming as best they could. The candlelit paths seemed to rearrange. Doors opened on their own. Bells began to sway gently, though there was no breeze. Then they saw them. Figures, dressed in robes, masks on, slowly walking between houses in perfect silence. But there was something wrong. Their feet never touched the ground. And their robes, ancient, threadbare, billowed as if underwater. Rei wanted to run, but her legs locked in place. The figures turned in unison and began to approach. Yuki dropped his camera. It clattered on the snow-covered ground. The sound echoed like a scream. The figures froze. All bells stopped swinging. Then, they turned. Slowly. Together. Toward the sound. Rei yanked Yuki up and ran, the camera abandoned. Daichi tried to follow, but he tripped on a loose stone. He gasped. Sound. The air shifted. The robed figures surged forward, no longer drifting, chasing. Rei never looked back. She and Yuki sprinted through the trees, snow tearing at their legs. Something clawed at her shoulder, sharp and freezing, but she didn't stop. They burst out of the woods and into the clearing where they'd started. The candles, the fog, the silence, all gone. They never saw Daichi again. Ray never released the footage. She refused interviews. Moved back to the US and changed her name. But on an obscure online forum, years later, a user claiming to be Yuki posted a grainy screenshot from their abandoned camera. It showed a path of candles and a dozen masked figures, floating, just behind Daichi's frozen silhouette. The metadata was intact. Dated, December 21, 1998. 12:01 a.m. A quarter century passed. It's now 2025. Locals say the mountain is stirring again. And this time, no one has seen Ray. One of tonight's stories was a fabrication. A crafted illusion. A false thread, woven into truth. Was it the surgeon's haunting past? The cursed eyes in the painting? Or the silent festival, that never sang again? You've heard them all. Now it's your turn. Can you trust your gut? Leave your guess in the comments. And in the next episode, the truth will be revealed. 3 stories. 1 lie. Trust your gut.